Many of you, sincere and weary, come with the same report on your lips. I'm blocked. I sit down to pray and nothing. I can't feel God. I can't get through. The heavens are brass. My mind is a wall. My heart is closed. And I know that ache. I know the honesty of it, and I honor the courage that even speaks it aloud. But listen to me now, quietly, simply. Blocked is not a condition in God. It is not a fact of your spiritual life. It is a suggestion presented to consciousness, and for a moment you have said yes to it. Do you see that? The feeling is intense, yes. The desolation seems to sit like a stone in the chest, yes. But the cause is not a real wall. The cause is that, in the instant you accepted the name blocked, you accepted a premise of separation, and you began to live under the weight of the name you granted it. The moment you call it blocked, you have declared it to be something with authority, as if it had law, as if it could bind you to the outside of your own temple. Do you see that? Say blocked, and you have already stepped out into the cold and told yourself the door is locked, when the door was never locked from within. Now never forget this. It doesn't come by asking God to take away the block. It doesn't come by begging or pleading or hammering at a heaven imagined up there somewhere. It comes by actually making contact with God. That is our way. Not petition, but contact. Not wrestling the mind, not forcing an opening with spiritual crowbars, not whipping up a mood. No. We refuse the suggestion. We relinquish the premise. We return to the simple, present fact. God is. And in that returning, the so-called wall finds no place to stand. I want you to feel the mercy in this, because it is merciful. You have not failed. You have not been left behind. You have only, for a breath, consented to a label that has no standing in truth. And the remedy is not heroic. It is not dramatic. It is a soft no to the suggestion, and a softer yes to the indwelling presence that has never moved 1 inch away. Do you see that? The pain was felt, but the story about its cause was mistaken. We don't fight the pain. We don't analyze the story. We don't bargain with God to change it. We withdraw our consent from the name we gave it, and we rest in the fact. God is. So the practical aim before us is very clear. We are not going to force an opening. We are not going to wrestle thought to the ground. We are going to stop granting authority to a passing suggestion, and we are going to return to contact. Quiet, immediate, present contact. And from there, everything necessary unfolds. But first, here and now, notice what you have just accepted when you say, I'm blocked, and begin, gently but firmly, to say no to that name. Do you see that? Now let us look squarely at how this thing works, because if you can see the mechanism, you won't be fooled by the mask. Hypnosis, spiritual hypnosis, as we use the word in this work, is nothing personal. It is impersonal error claiming presence, claiming power, and even claiming law without divine authorization. Do you see that? It whispers, I am here and I am the rule. But there is no such rule in God, and there is no such God setting it up. It is a thief of appearances, not a fact of spirit. The sequence is always the same. First, a sensation, a dullness in the mind, a dryness in the heart, a weariness in the body. Sensation, like a cloud crossing the sun. Next, interpretation. You, innocently, name it. I'm blocked. And the moment the label is nailed on it, it seems to take on a kind of dignity, as if it had charter and statute. After that, fear and strain. What's wrong with me? How do I break through? I must try harder, push harder, pray louder. And what comes of that? More sensation, more tension, more dryness. And now the loop is running, and you say, see, there really is a condition here. But the condition is not in spirit. It is in the belief you granted the label. Do you see that? So I say to you with love, it isn't your blockage. You do not own it, and it does not own you. It is a suggestion drifting through the collective human atmosphere, trying to borrow your consent, looking to wear your name as its uniform. It has no life of its own, no breath, no authority stamped by the Father. Without your yes, it's a letter with no signature, and with no mailman to carry it anywhere. What keeps the spell alive? The common reinforcements are simple and cruel. Spiritual comparison. Everyone else seems to feel God. I alone am outside. Timelines. By now I should be further. Last year was better. Today is worse. Self-judgment. It's because I failed, because I sinned, because I didn't meditate long enough. And the deadliest one. The old superstition that God is distant and must be reached. That there is an up there who might be persuaded by your effort to come down here. Oh no, never forget this. The kingdom of God is within you, nearer than breathing, closer than hands and feet. Distance is the lie. Presence is the truth. Now listen to this checkpoint and let it settle. Do you see why fighting it strengthens it? You are granting it reality by contending with it as power. The moment you square off against it, you have admitted it has weight. The more you plead with heaven to remove it, the more you advertise separation. But there is no law of separation in God, and there is no statute of blockade in the kingdom. In quietness, in a simple refusal to give a name power, you begin to be free, because only God is. And where God is, false law cannot hold. Now here is where almost every sincere student, and I mean sincere, makes the same mistake and prolongs the discomfort. The reflex to beg. God, remove this blockage. God, fix my mind. God, give me peace. Do you hear the premise tucked inside those sentences? God is there. I am here. A wall stands between. And if I knock long enough, loud enough, hard enough, perhaps the door will open. That is distance thinking. That is the old superstition. And I say to you, out of a heart full of love, stop such nonsense and stop such nonsensical religious teachings. Never forget this. God isn't up in heaven waiting to be persuaded. The kingdom of God is within you. Do you see that? Petition fails, not because God is unwilling, but because petition assumes a reality that does not exist. The very asking, remove the block, accepts there is a block, accepts it has law, accepts that God is delayed until you get through. And then you wait for what was never absent. You wait for what is nearer than breathing, closer than hands and feet. And the waiting itself becomes the wall you fear. Do you see why that cannot work? True prayer. Now let's use our own word for it. True prayer is contact. Actually making contact with God. Not words reaching outward, but recognition settling inward. It is the quiet acknowledgement, here, now. God is. Not, come, Lord, but be still and know. Not, do something for me, but thy presence is my sufficiency in all things. Notice the inner posture. Petition strains, it tries to break through, it tightens the brow and clenches the heart. Contact surrenders. It rests where God already is. It releases the premise that there is any barrier to overcome. This is the difference between hammering on a door and discovering you are already inside the room. So when that old reflex rises, God, fix this, remove that, catch it, lovingly but firmly, and refuse its premise. You do not need God to come. You need to awaken where God already is. Never forget this. You do not reach God. You awaken to God. And in that awakening, what was called block has nothing to cling to, no statute to enforce, no courtroom to argue in, because it was only the echo of your own consent to separation. Now, do you see the mercy in this? No more wrestling the mind, no more bargaining with heaven, no more advertising absence with our prayers. We lay the petition down and we take up recognition. We rest, even if the sensation still whispers for a moment. We rest in the fact, God is. And I promise you, as you do that, grace begins to function as cause. And the outer sense, which was only reporting your inner premise, quietly, naturally, unstrains. Leave the outer alone. Leave the asking alone. Establish contact. There, in that holy hush, the supposed blockage dissolves without a struggle, because there never was a law of separation to begin with. Do you see that? Now we come to the central thing. And if you will let it drop from the head to the heart, the rest of this subject will evaporate like mist at sunrise. The kingdom of God is within you. Not up there, not out there, not after a better day or a better mood. Within you. Closer than breathing, nearer than hands and feet. Wherever you are, whatever the clock says, whatever the body seems to feel or the mind seems to report, the presence that is life itself is the I at the center of your being. Do you see that? Now lay down the simple logic and refuse to be argued out of it by sensation. If God is omnipresent, omni, every, present, then tell me, where is this wall supposed to be? If God fills all in all, if in Him you live and move and have your being, then a blocked place would have to be a place where God is not. But there is no such place. If I make my bed in hell, thou art there. If I take the wings of the morning and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, even there thy hand shall lead me. Even there. Not after you feel it. Not after you fix yourself. Even there. Do you see that? Take it to the extremes so the middle can no longer frighten you. In fear, thou art there. In fatigue that makes the bones hollow, thou art there. In shame so heavy you dare not lift your eyes, thou art there. In dryness, where every prayer seems sand in the mouth, thou art there. In confusion, where thoughts chase each other like dogs around a tree, thou art there. Valley of the shadow of death, holy ground under your feet. Lion's den, fourth man in the furnace. Height, depth, past, future, light, darkness, none of these ungods, God. None. There is no geography of absence in omnipresence. What does this mean practically? It ends the superstition that you must produce the presence by effort, mood, method, or merit. You do not manufacture sunrise. You turn to see it. You do not wind God up like a clock. You consent to God as already here. Prayer, then, is recognition, not production. It is a yielding, a soft inward yes to what is. God is. And in that yes, the very premise of wall melts, because it has no support apart from your consent to separation. So take this as your checkpoint, and do not let it go. The sense of blockage is always a claim of separation, never a report of divine absence. Never. It is not God saying, I am far. It is only suggestion saying, you are too. Refuse the arithmetic. I and the Father are one. Rest in that. Whisper it if you must, not to persuade God, but to anchor yourself in what cannot move. I will never leave thee, nor forsake thee. Then be still. Not grim stillness, not strained stillness. Simple, consenting stillness. And you will find that the wall had no timber, no mortar, no law. It was a shadow on the eye, not on the room. God is. Do you see that? Now, because this is practical and not theory, let me give you the exact move. The moment the word blocked flashes up on the screen of awareness, do not pick it up for examination. Do not turn it over to see its underside. Do not begin to narrate how long it has been there or why it has come. That is how hypnosis keeps its seat. Instead, right there, in that first half breath, refuse the label as authority. Not angrily, not as if you were wrestling a serpent. Simply decline to let it wear a badge. No, you have no law. You are not a condition in God. And then we do not replace one sentence with a longer, clever sentence. We return to the simplest, purest recognition. God is. Now let me slow it down so you can practice it while I speak. Notice. That is first. You notice the sensation, the dryness, the thought, here it is again. Second, pause. One beat. Let the mouth close. Let the shoulders loosen a fraction. Take your hands off the levers. Third, inwardly withdraw attention from the sensation. What do I mean? Let it do whatever it wants at the edge of the stage, but do not spotlight it. Withdraw the belief that it has meaning, that it is reporting God's absence. Fourth, softly affirm, softly, as you would speak to an infant in the night. God is. Not to make it so, not to convince the mind, as a resting place, as a homecoming. Fifth, be still. Just that. Not a long stillness if you are in a doorway, not a heroic stillness if you are in a crowd. 30 seconds, 5 seconds, a breath. Be still and know. The tone is everything. This is not a battle. This is not a mental argument. There is no point scoring here, no winning on the judge's card. It is an inner non-consent to the suggestion and a gentle turning into the fact that requires no defense. If the thought returns, and it may, you do not brandish a sword. You repeat the sequence. Notice. Pause. Withdraw attention. God is. Still. Each time you do it, you are declining to feed the false law with your consent. Each time, you are letting presence bear witness to itself without your management. Do you see the difference? We do not overcome blockage. We stop granting it membership in reality. That is dehypnotizing. Hypnosis begs you to join a club that doesn't exist and then to pay dues forever. Dehypnotizing is walking past the table and refusing to sign. No protest march, no manifesto. A quiet no to unreality, and a quieter yes to what is. God is. And if the mind says, "But nothing is happening," let it chatter without a courtroom. You are not measuring happenings. You are consenting to presence. You are not waiting for a feeling to certify God. You are resting where God already is, the life of you. If you need words in those early moments, let them be few and always the same river returning to its source. God is. Your work ends there. Grace begins there. You will find, sometimes quickly, sometimes like the sun lifting a fog, that the weight falls through your hands because you stopped holding it up with analysis, with pleading, with fear. Practice this. Mid-sentence, mid-errand, midnight. Eyes open or closed, 10 times a day for a heartbeat at a time. Not as a technique to get something, but as recognition to be where you are. And in that rhythm, you will prove for yourself why we say, never forget this. Leave the problem alone. Make contact. For contact is not far, and it is never absent. It is as immediate as your next willing pause. God is. Do you see that? Now you may say, all right, I can refuse the label and rest in God is. But why does that do anything beyond giving me a little comfort? Listen carefully and do not miss this, because here is the practical law. Contact is cause. When realization is touched, even lightly, grace begins to flow as law into experience. Not as sentiment, not as a warm blanket only, as the creative, ordering activity of spirit that shapes what appears as thought, feeling, timing, body, relationship, supply. Do you see that? We are not hypnotizing ourselves into optimism. We are yielding to the only real causation there is, God expressing as our being. What changes first? Not necessarily your bank account, not necessarily the diagnosis, not necessarily the neighbor's face. First, the climate within changes. In quietness and in confidence shall be your strength. The breath deepens without your commanding it. The forehead releases. A certainty, without argument, without proof texts, takes its seat. I am held. I am not out here alone throwing ropes at a distant heaven. That assurance is not self-talk. It is the presence of the shepherd announcing himself. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Not a petition in it, a knowing. Do you see that? From that inner climate, effects begin, and they do so naturally, without strain. Right ideas appear where confusion sat. One clear next step instead of 10 frantic strategies. Right timing reveals itself. Doors you were battering swing because you stopped battering. Conversations that were clenched loosen. The hard edge in your tone is taken away, and the other heart hears without its armor. The body, which was only reporting the pressure of fear, unwinds. Pain loses its narrative and is simply less. Guidance that you were begging for is suddenly obvious. The call to make, the word to hold, the errand to skip. You will find, as often as not, that what you were trying to produce out there comes of itself when you leave it to grace. Leave the outer life alone for the moment. Seek the kingdom within, and watch what follows. Now here is where another subtle hypnosis creeps in, and I warn you because I know the trap. Impatience. Is it working yet? Where's my sign? That measuring is petition's twin wearing a new hat. The moment you demand proof on schedule, you have stepped back into separation and put grace on your payroll. Oh no. Abide. rest in contact for its own sake. Let the vine carry the branch. Let sap run in its own rhythm. All these things shall be added unto you is not an invoice you press. It is the way of life when God is acknowledged as the only life. Why does it work? Because reality works. Because there are not two powers, one called blockage and one called God, battling for your day. There is one. When you consent to that one, its nature must externalize as order, as adjustment, as provision. It cannot do otherwise. The human will can jam the channel. Judgment and fear can cloud the lens, but the moment contact is restored, the ray comes through again, and what you call outer makes way for it, as traffic makes way for a quiet, steady light. So hold yourself gently to the simple practice. Refuse the label. Return to God is. Abide without peeking. And watch, sometimes swiftly, sometimes like snow melting on the north side of a hill, how grace, not your struggle, becomes the author of the next page. Do you see that? Now let me speak plainly, and I do it without a whip, and without a finger pointed at you, but with the seriousness that heals. The main resistance, the heavy felt block, is not that you lack a method, not that you haven't found the right seat or the right time of day. The real self-blocker is judgment, condemnation, this stubborn human will to be right, even if it costs you peace. Do you see that? The inner clutter that most dulls receptivity isn't noise from the street. It's the chorus we conduct inside. Animosities and hates, envyings and jealousies, resentments old and freshly polished, criticisms of neighbors and nations and family, and yes, those sharp little verdicts against ourselves that seem so pious, but are just the same blade turned inward. Now, hear me gently. None of this brings a punishment from God. There is no such God. Absolutely none. God does not mark your ledger and switch off the light. Oh no. These states are their own darkness. They make a climate in which the already present grace cannot be felt. They are not thunderbolts. They are fog. They do not change God. They change our capacity to receive. We turn the dial to static and then complain that the music has ceased. Do you see that? You speak a hard word in your heart. You clutch a rightness like a stone. You replay an injury and mount a case. And then you sit to pray and say, I'm blocked. Of course. The same energy that accuses is the energy that separates in feeling, and then names the separation as if it were law. You may ask, then must I become good before I can touch grace? Oh no, it's the opposite. Get God's grace and it will make you good. But notice the order. Receptivity first, reform as fruit. And how do we open that receptivity when judgment has made the air thick? Not by self-improvement stunts, not by promising yourself never to think a hard thought again. Stop such nonsense. Begin with willingness. Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. Say it before you feel it. Say it when the face rises that has been your practice target for bitterness. Say it for yourself, too. Father, forgive me. I knew not what I did. That willingness is a crack in the fog, and through that crack, light begins again to be light. Let me give you the mechanism so you can recognize it and refuse it. Condemnation tightens the chest and narrows the lens. It plays prosecutor and judge and jailer all in one breath. In that court, there is no room for the still, small voice. The gavel drowns it. But the instant, just the instant, you release the will to be right, the court adjourns. Silence returns. Contact returns. Nothing in God moved. Your consent moved. Do you see? The heart that condemns is the heart that feels separated, and then calls it blocked. So right where you are, make a simple trade. Give up the satisfaction of the last word, and take the peace of the first presence. When resentment knocks, do not open the door to argue. Whisper your consent to mercy. Let the other off your hook, and you will find you are off it too. Not to earn God, but to hear God where God already is. And in that softened place, in that yielded will, you will discover how swiftly grace resumes its law, guiding, correcting, healing. Because the only real barrier was this: we were busy being right when we could have been in contact. Do you see that? Now, beneath the loudness of condemnation, there is a quieter voice that does more damage because it pretends to be holy. It says, "Yes, yes, love and forgiveness are good, but not for me. I am unworthy. I am impure. I am inconsistent. I have failed too many times. I am not spiritual enough." And then, with a pious look, it nails itself to your door and calls itself humility. Oh no, that is not humility. That is the same hypnosis wearing a sackcloth robe. That is the shame spike that pins the error in place and keeps the spell alive. Do you see that? I say to you out of a heart full of love and through years of living in this work, there is no such God as the God who withholds grace until you qualify. Absolutely none. Never forget this. It makes no difference to what degree we are sinners. Absolutely none. It is never a question of becoming good enough to get God. Oh no, it's the opposite. Get God's grace, and it will make you good. Grace does not negotiate with your ledger. Grace heals the root that writes ledgers. Do you see that? Take it to the extremity, so the middle cannot frighten you. The thief on the cross, this day. The woman taken in adultery. Neither do I condemn thee. 70 times 7, again and again and again, until healing appears. If I make my bed in hell, thou art there. There. Not after probation. There. There is no rationing in God, no coupons for forgiveness, no monthly allowance of mercy. The supply is the nature of God, and the nature of God is unbroken givingness. Wherever you go, the kingdom of God is within you. Now see how shame props up the hypnosis. If you accept, I am unworthy, every passing dryness becomes proof. Every tired feeling becomes a verdict. Every delay is read as heaven's frown. Then you sit to pray, and what are you doing? You beg from outside because the premise of unworthiness has already moved you to the porch. And you call that blocked. But it is not blockade. It is consent to a lie about who you are in God. Do you see that? So here is the practical mercy. And it is radical because it refuses the premise entirely. When the shame thought rises, do not argue with it and do not autograph it. Meet it with mercy. Father, forgive me. I knew not what I did. Then go further. This is not my identity. God is my life, right here. Whisper it, not as a technique, as recognition. I and the Father are one. I will never leave thee, nor forsake thee. not to excuse wrongs, but to touch the only presence that can heal the root that keeps producing them. Leave the autopsy of your soul alone. Stop such nonsense. It is not your scolding that reforms you. It is contact with grace that reforms you. If the mind says, "But I did it again," mercy answers, 70 times 7. If it says, "But I don't feel worthy," mercy answers, "Worthiness is not your manufacture. It is God's presence as your very life." If it says, "Let me punish myself a while," mercy answers, "No. Be still and know." Each mercy is a removal of the spike. Each non-consent to unworthiness loosens the lie. Then, quite without drama, the ease returns, the natural ease of contact. Not by earning, not by mood, but by simple recognition that only God names you, and the name is beloved. Shame is a hypnotic reinforcement. Mercy dissolves it, and you, unspiked, rest again where you never left. God is. Do you see that? Now let me give you the simplest daily rhythm, because this must be lived or it will drift back into theory. 3 touches: morning, midday, night. And if needed, a dozen little touches tucked into the day like breath. In each, the whole work can be done in under 2 minutes. No forcing, no performance, just actually making contact with God. Morning. Sit if you can. If not, stand at the sink or pause on the edge of the bed. Let the shoulders drop a fraction. Unclench the jaw. Don't engineer the breath. Let breathing be what breathing is. 30 seconds of simply arriving where you are. Step 1. Recognition. Without drama, name the fact impersonally. A suggestion of blockage is presenting itself. Not, "I'm blocked." That consents to identity. This is a passing suggestion, nothing more, trying to borrow your name. Do you see that? Step 2. Non-consent. Quietly, without heat. I do not accept this as a condition in God. That's all. No debate. No autopsy. You refuse it the badge of law, and you deny it the courthouse of your attention. One sentence is enough, because reality doesn't need your argument. Step 3. Contact. Rest the mind in a single phrase, not as a chant to work something up, but as recognition of what already is. God is. Whisper it inwardly, then be still. Listen, but do not hunt for proof. Do not go fishing for tingles, warmth, visions, or verdicts. Let there be a soft, alert hush. 5 seconds, 15, 40, whatever today offers. The sign is not fireworks. The sign is that you are not pushing the river. Be still and know. Step 4. Benediction. End with a small embodiment that lets grace move its first inch into form. One email answered from peace rather than pressure. One apology made without rehearsing. One task quietly begun instead of postponed. Not to improve appearances by will, but to let the inner climate express itself as a next right motion. Leave the rest to grace. Midday. Repeat in miniature. Eyes open if you like. Standing in a line. Before a meeting. At a red light. Shoulders ease. Recognition. A suggestion is knocking. Non-consent. No law in God. Contact. God is. 10 seconds. Then a gentle next act. Send the note. Soften the tone. Wait an extra beat before you speak. Night. Before sleep, 2 minutes. Let the body down into the bed as if into everlasting arms. Recognition. Non-consent to any lingering self-blame. Contact. God is. Then a benediction of mercy over the day. Father, forgive. Father, bless. Turn off the measuring. Sleep inside the fact. Beware the common mistake, grading the prayer by sensation. Stop such nonsense. Success is not thunder. It is quiet authority. Less fear, less strain, more steadiness. That is grace reordering experience from the inside. Do this simply, faithfully, and you will find the spell of blocked cannot stand 2 minutes of non-consent and recognition. God is. Do you see that? Now we seal it. And I mean seal it in the only way demonstrations are ever sealed. Not by a flourish, not by a speech to yourself about how spiritual you are, but by quiet embodiment. Act as if it were so has been misunderstood by the world to mean pretending, performing, putting on the mask until the feelings catch up. Oh no, stop such nonsense. Embodiment is not pretense, it is obedience. You are not acting to convince God or the mind, you are moving in accord with the higher fact you have touched. Contact speaks first, conduct follows. Do you see that? What does it look like? Very simple, almost unremarkable to the eye. After contact, you speak with less defensiveness because you are no longer guarding a separate self. After contact, you make the call you have avoided, not to force an outcome, but because love leaves no room for procrastination coated with fear. After contact, you take the walk, not to win a merit badge, but to let the inner ease move your limbs. After contact, you keep the promise you made last week, the small one, because integrity is how love wears shoes. After contact, you send the note without an argument rehearsed in your head. You enter the room without the armor. You let someone else be right without shrinking. You set down the extra cookie, or you enjoy it from freedom rather than compulsion. These are not techniques to get grace to move. They are the forms grace takes when it is already moving. Do you see that? Let me give you the arc in one line so you can carry it in your pocket. Blocked is a suggestion. Contact is the cure. Grace is the cause. Love is the way open. There. That is the whole roadmap. And now, act from it. Not to prove it to anyone, not even to yourself, but to stop lending energy to the contrary premise. When a little fear whispers, you do the next right, gentle thing anyway, because you are obeying the fact of presence, not the rumor of separation. How will you know you are not pretending? Because there is no strain in it. Pretense strains. Obedience rests. Pretense demands applause. Obedience is content with quiet fruit. Pretense watches the clock for results. Obedience abides and lets grace show itself in its own timing. Sometimes at once, sometimes as almost nothing, until, without fanfare, everything essential has shifted. Do you see? You were never outside. You only accepted a thought of outside. The moment you refuse it and live from the realized inside, the spell can no longer find your consent. So hold yourself, gently but steadily, to this. Contact, then conduct. Leave the speech-making. Let your steps say what your heart now knows. And when the old story tries to rise, meet it with the simplest final word. God is. Be still. Let grace prove it.